The chair is advised the quorum is present. The committee will proceed with its business. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our previous meeting. Gentleman from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to approve the meeting minutes from our February 14th meeting as written in the Chamber Automation System.
Gentleman from the 21st moves to approve the minutes of our previous meeting on Valentine's Day. Are there amendments? Discussion. If not, question for the committee is on adoption of the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted. The minutes are approved. Next item on our agenda is reports of subcommittees. Chair recognizes the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Cannon, Chair of the Subcommittee on Honorary Naming Resolutions, submitted the following report. The Subcommittee on Honorary Naming Resolutions has had under consideration House concurrent resolutions 4, 9, 14, 16, 21, 22, 24, 25, 26, 28, and 32, and committee substitute for House concurrent resolution 2, and reports the same back with the recommendation that they each be adopted by the full committee.
Thank you to the clerk. Is there discussion on the report of the subcommittee? Is there discussion? Gentleman from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move House concurrent resolutions 4, 9, 14, 16, 21, 22, 24, 25, 26, 28, 32, and committee substitute for House concurrent resolution 2 be reported to the floor with the recommendation that they each be adopted, that they first be referred to the Committee on Rules.
Gentleman from the 21st moves that House concurrent resolutions 4, 9, 14, 16, 21, 22, 24, 25, 26, 28, 32, and committee substitute for House concurrent resolution 2 be reported to the floor with the recommendation that they each be adopted, but they first be referred to the Committee on Rules. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted, and all those resolutions will be, and the committee substitute for the one resolution will be reported to the floor with the recommendation that they each be adopted, but they first be referred to the Committee on Rules. Next item on our agenda is presentation on the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment and how it may affect West Virginia, featuring representatives from West Virginia American Water and the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection. I do note that we have the president of West Virginia American Water appearing before us remotely. Sir, if you could please state your name for those listening at home, and can you confirm that you can hear us? Excellent. We can hear you. We can't hear you.
No, it's not coming through the TV like it was.
It's not coming through the TV.
Oh, I got it muted.
All right, could you test and say something one more time, sir? Nope.
What in the, it was working earlier.
No, he's not on mute.
It was working earlier.
Community at ease. All right, committee will return to order, sir. Thank you very much. Could you please state your name now that we're streaming once again? Perfect. And sir, just as the ordinary function of the committee, could you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Sir, we will turn the floor over to you for a moment to give us an update on West Virginia American Water's efforts and anything that's going on relative to the chemical spill in East Palestine.
No, absolutely. Again, my apologies for not being able to attend in person. I am here thanks to our emergency operations center, the team of folks we have assembled here. So, again, my apologies. But yes, as a quick update, we are tracking along with many others, specifically to follow information from Arsenco, as well as three state regulatory agencies, the Bureau of Public Health and the DEP, status of the Ohio River and the contaminants in it from the train derailment there in East Palestine. I think I said that wrong. There in Ohio.
I don't hear anything
And,
coming from it.
essentially right now at our Huntington treatment facility, here we have switched our source water over to a tank. Again, based on information from Arsenco and others as to the river conditions and how long we should continue in this posture.
Leave 9 on, just 100%. All right. Thank you, sir. At this point, we'll open it up for questions from members of the committee. We do appreciate the update on your current response efforts. Are there questions of the presenter? The gentleman from the left.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, sir, for being here at the meeting. Does American Water have information about what they're finding in the Ohio River, anywhere upstream of, your location in Huntington?
Yes, we're getting daily updates from Arsenco on information for the testing being done in the river. Would probably defer to representatives from the DEP that are there. They can speak to specifics, but the main chemical being looked at is butyl acrylite. There are a couple of others that are similar volatile organic compounds, if you will, that are being tested for. But that's the information that we're being given. And based on current information, the leading edge of that, those compounds being found in the river is still around 60 to 70 miles upstream of the Huntington facility. And from a time and travel standpoint, that equates to about a day, day and a half. So they expected time, arrival here sometime tomorrow, potentially of those compounds in the river. Concentrations will be, dependent upon river conditions, of course.
Mr. Chairman, I will reserve then questions for representatives from DEP when they're available.
Certainly, thank you to the gentleman. Further questions? The gentlelady from the 56.
I don't have a thing.
Oh,
I do now.
You do?
Good. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for being here, Rob. And thank you for all your work that you're doing. Could you talk a little bit about the temporary secondary source?
Yes, absolutely. So the Garcia River, flows into the Ohio, actually a little bit downstream of our operations center, one of our intakes on the Ohio, and then a little bit upstream of the main treatment facility. And we're have set up a temporary intake pumping system with portable pumps installed almost a mile of temporary 24-inch pipe to tie into an existing raw water line that we're now feeding that into the treatment facility there here in Huntington. And so at this point, we are 100% using water from the Garcia and not taking any source water from the Ohio River.
Thank
And I
you.
would add, absolutely that river and that source meets all water quality parameters, and again, maintaining essentially normal treatment at our water treatment facility here in Huntington.
Thank you. And that's your emergency plan, right? Like, this isn't new. You've had this plan in place in case this issue came up, and so now you're just kind of putting it into place. Is that right?
Yeah, this is absolutely part of our business continuity plan, absolutely.
Okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
Certainly.
Absolutely.
Further questions of this presenter? The gentleman from the 98th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir, for being here. You may have covered this, but I may have missed it. Your current filtration I understand that you switched over to an alternate source, but is your current filtration, is it adequate in order to filter this substance that you're monitoring?
Yeah, so again, since we're on a different source, we don't anticipate bringing any of this potential chemical into our source, into our treatment plant. And that was part of our planning process, that there are techniques that could potentially be used to treat this chemical depending on concentrations. And again, we're saying and others have done a lot of work to try to determine that treatability. We just deemed it a better option for us to switch to this source, although we do have contingency plans if for some reason we needed to take water from the Ohio, so be it both mechanical and chemical treatment, to try to take that chemical out if it were in that source water. But again, we felt this was a better option since we could do this to set up and run this totally separate source.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions, this presenter, the gentleman from the 18th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you serve any other communities upstream of the Guyandotte River?
Yeah, so we only serve here in Cabell and Wayne counties. We don't serve up into Mason County or any further north going from here. So no, that's just the areas that we serve.
Okay, and even though you don't serve anywhere north or upstream, do you have any information as to any of those other communities?
Yeah, so I do know the majority of the communities going north until you get significantly further upstream use various well sources along the river, different types of ways those are set up. But as far as actually pulling from the Ohio directly as a source, I believe you have to get a couple of hundred miles upstream before any of the facilities do that here in West Virginia.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions, this presenter, the gentleman from the 72nd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for being here, Rob. Don't want to take much of your precious time, and I appreciate the fact that you are an emergency center. Quickly, with regards to the capacity of the Guyandotte source water versus your actual production of your peak daily flow, do you have enough volume of source water? What's it relate to your average daily flow or peak daily flow out of the plant?
Yeah, we have the ability to actually pump more water than we need to meet demand out of the facility. We're actually having to modulate those pumps and run them below their full capacity to make sure that we're not pumping too much water. So yes, we're able to meet the capacity of our facility and needs of the community.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it, and thanks for your efforts.
Further questions to this presenter?
Oh, I have one more.
Anyone before the gentlelady gets a second bite at the apple? Gentlelady from the 56th?
That's it, yay!
Hey, I got it.
Sorry, I'm asking somebody else's question because they're a little shy. Is the rain helping or hurting?
So the rain at this point will have a couple of effects. So it will definitely provide dilution to the Ohio River. It will actually also increase velocity on the river, which could help this chemical to both dilute and move through quicker. We're also monitoring water levels themselves along the Guyandotte where we have the temporary pumping and some expectations of those river levels peaking over the coming days. And we don't anticipate at this point those being a problem for our temporary pumping facility, but that's the main things we're tracking at this point.
Awesome, thank you.
Further questions to the presenter? Chair has a few. Sir, first, thank you once again for being here, even remotely. In relation to the chemicals that we're looking at here that are clearly of some concern, and certainly, I know you wouldn't have changed your source here had it not been somewhat of a concern. But from a persistence in the water source or in the groundwater or those sorts of things, obviously I know the bulk of this, you said would move past sort of your primary intake there in Huntington, hopefully within the next day or so, or at least that's when it would begin to come through. But once that sort of initial amount is downstream, what is the next steps, or what are the next steps for West Virginia American Water from a testing perspective and those sorts of things, and what are the concerns that you would have or that we as a state should have related to when we can switch back to the primary and or ordinary source?
Yeah, some great questions, and we're actually evaluating that on kind of a daily basis. And our intention is to use the information around what is actually found from direct testing And, keep in mind, it's a very large river, so direct testing is somewhat difficult to be fully representative, so we always apply comfort factors to that. But once all available information based on our own testing and based again on information from Arsenco and Bureau of Public Health, DEP, and others, it appears that the entirety of what was in the river for this chemical or chemicals are downstream of us. Then we will apply a risk, comfort factor to that just to make sure, because again, there's always a chance that something can get missed in that testing. We haven't exactly determined, but of a few days past that we would continue to use the Guide source before we switch back over. And throughout that time period, we would continue our testing just to make sure that no other chemicals were to show up during that time period.
Okay, perfect.
So I'm sorry that's a little bit of a vague answer, but it's kind of on purpose. This is a bit of a dynamic situation, and we're definitely going to err on the side of caution here.
Sure. But just to put some folks at ease, you've obviously made this change prior to any of these, any of the products of the spill making it to the intakes here, so they don't need to worry about, at least this point, the water pipes in their home or any residuals within the common pipes of the systems or anything like that, and you've made this switch prior to those chemicals in any way hitting the intakes.
Yeah, absolutely. We made this switch essentially at least right at 2 days before all the available information and testing data has shown that it would be at our intake area. And again, our direct testing, which we're doing every 2 hours ourselves of the river, let alone what's coming from all the external sources, has shown nothing of this chemical at our facility to this point. So we are confident that we've made the switch in an appropriate amount of time to ensure that it does not impact our customers.
Okay, and just for the benefit, there was another member who just sort of asked, but while I've got the floor, what day did you or did Western American Water make that change?
Yeah, so we started, actively testing this on Tuesday, and by Wednesday morning, we were fully using just water from the Guide.
Okay, very good. Any further questions from members of the committee for Western American Water? Gentleman from the 98th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, could you describe the communication that you've had with federal agencies and to the extent that that has been supportive of your efforts?
Yeah, again, our main point of contact has been Arsenco, which is kind of the body that coordinates a lot of these different agencies for the various treatment facilities along the Ohio River. They've been our primary point of contact. We've also, like I said, been in contact with both EPH and DEP here, as well as we had some contact with the Army Corps of Engineers, needing some help from them from a permitting standpoint of setting up temporary intake, did some coordinated efforts actually with the Coast Guard for some sampling, and we're in contact with EPA as well. And then we've been, very much in contact with everyone throughout Cabell County, both, Mayor Williams and his staff, and others throughout, Cabell County area, and then also in coordination and conversation with U.S. Senator Capitol and U.S. Senator Manchin's offices as well.
Is there anything that you need that you're not receiving?
No, sir. We've gotten information that we need, we've gotten coordination that we need, offers of assistance if needed, absolutely, and have been very appreciative of all the coordination and all the folks have been willing to either provide assistance or help you get those. So we're very appreciative of that.
Good to hear. Thank you.
And I forgot to mention, my apologies, we've also been in coordination and contact with the governor's office as well, and making sure that, we're coordinating that. So my apologies, I forgot to mention that.
No, excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you to the gentleman. Any further questions from members of the committee? Final item, I guess, from the chair, sir. Would you be willing to just have your communication staff keep in contact with the committee such that we can certainly assist in any coordination that you need or getting information out to our constituents?
Absolutely. Yeah, we would be very happy to continue coordination, continue communication, and if you need any further from us, don't hesitate to reach out.
Certainly. Sir, thank you very much for appearing before us, and we're going to move on to the DEP unless you have anything remaining that you'd like to advise the committee.
The again, just appreciate your time, appreciate, letting us talk, and we're here to answer anything that we can. And with that, I will let you move on, and my intention is to move back with the team here. And if you need something from us, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Certainly. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, next item on our agenda is going, or it's not the next item, but the next presenter that we have will be from Department of Environmental Protection. Sir, thank you. I don't believe you've been before our committee just yet. That'll be for the next meeting, so. All right, sir, and for the benefits of those listening at home, could you please state your name into the microphone for us?
Scott Mandarola, Deputy Cabinet Secretary for the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection.
Deputy Secretary Mandarola, thank you for being here. This will be your first time, I believe, this year appearing before the committee, so if you would raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Floor is yours to begin your presentation.
Thank you. I won't go into the details of the date when the train derailment originally happened, but I'll start with the DEP has been coordinating with Ohio River Valley Sanitation Commission, and Rob was talking about that, or SENCO, the Ohio EPA, US EPA, on monitoring the chemical as it moves down the river. As of this morning, okay, this morning. The DEP was on site yesterday with our SENCO staff to track the plume. We collected samples along the Ohio River from Ravenswood to Parkersburg. The leading edge of the plume, based on yesterday's numbers, is mile marker 264 at about 11 o'clock this morning, okay? That's right near Point Pleasant, the mouth of the Kanawha River. The highest concentration observed on Wednesday were still below 3 ppb. The influx of water from the Kanawha River should add at least 25% dilution to the Ohio River. The Kanawha makes up approximately 25, depending on the flow. With the rain event, it's going to be likely higher than that, and there's going to be a significant amount of dilution coming into the Ohio River as well, but even prior to the mouth of the Kanawha. Greater Cincinnati Water Works has been running the confirmation samples for Orsenco. So Orsenco's got what's called the ODS system. It's the organic detection system. They're located all up and down the Ohio River. They run on a routine basis. They take samples so many times a week to monitor the river for any organic compounds that may show up out of the ordinary. In events such as this, as soon as this event was identified, they begin running samples almost continuously to monitor the source. And the screening samples that we were taking yesterday, us and Orsenco, were going to the ODS system for the initial results, and then for confirmation, they're sent to Cincinnati Water Works. They have a certified lab that then analyzes the sample to confirm what we're seeing in the ODS system. Right now, the plume is estimated to reach Huntington area by late Friday or early Saturday morning. Okay, these preliminary monitoring results are still well below the provisional health guidance values issued by the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. That number is 560 parts per billion. Okay, the highest we've seen along the river has been 12. And that was up near Weirton. Currently, it's below 3, and it's dropping fairly rapidly. And with this additional dilution from the rain in the Kanawha River, it may not even be detectable by the time it reaches the Huntington intake. The DEP is also in contact with US EPA regarding air monitoring. The primary air monitoring around the site has been being done by EPA. Not Ohio EPA, but the US EPA. They've been taking what's called a summa canister samples and absorbent tube samples at a radius around the original crash site to see if there's any hazardous pollutants coming off the site. So far, they have not reported anything outside of levels of concern. Now, West Virginia DEP, our Department of, or Division of Air Quality, has monitoring stations in the northern part of the state, which would be essentially directly downwind of the site. We have monitors in both Brooke and Hancock County, in Weirton, Follinsby, Lawrenceville, New Cumberland, and we have detected nothing unusual at any of our sites. So none of the pollutants have affected our air monitoring sites at all. So we're not seeing any levels of concern showing up through the air at this point in time. And that's an update as of right now. There was some questions earlier that I might be able to expound upon. One of them was, is the rain helping or hurting? I was in contact with Ohio EPA, the chief of the Surface Water Division, who's in charge of this site, and their emergency response folks this morning. They anticipated the rain event. They were looking forward to it. They knew it was coming. They've dug additional trenches to capture any additional runoff from the site. They currently have a cofferdam set up in the tributary above and below the site. All the water, the clean water coming towards the site is being pumped around and discharged downstream. All the water collected on site in these trenches is being collected in vac trucks and properly treated and disposed of else off-site. And they're currently in the process of doing some excavating of the polluted soil on the site as well. But they assured us that everything is being done on site to make sure that none of this precipitation causes an additional pollutants to get into the Ohio River. And again, as far as dilution is concerned, the rain is going to help from that perspective. It was already, the concentration of butyl acrylate was already decreasing fairly rapidly. The rain's going to help, and the Kanawha River is going to help as well.
Questions for the presenter? Gentleman from the 72nd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here, Mr. Mandarola. I know drinking water is not within your purview, but obviously I know your role with Ursanko. Can you talk a little bit about the efforts that either you or Ursanko or the Bureau of Public Health have taken specific to some of the rainy wells that are along the Ohio River and the testing with the water systems to make sure that our public is safe?
I have had conversations with the Bureau of Public Health, and they're actually working with the water companies up and down the river, testing the finished water for this particular pollutant. And they have said that there has been no detections in the finished water at any water company in West Virginia up and along the Ohio River, including Weirton, where it was originally detected at 12.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Mandarola.
Further questions for the presenter? Gentleman from the 98th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Mandarola. Good to have you here. Where does this plume reside? Is this like a surface, this substance generally stay to the surface of the body of water, or where?
My understanding is it doesn't float as well as a petroleum product where you could completely skim it with a boom or something. It can get mixed into the water column to some degree, but it doesn't fully mix well. And at this concentration, you're talking about 1 part per, or say 3 parts per billion. That's a very, very small amount. It's like a drop of water in an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
So I take it that the best way to mitigate it is through dilution as opposed to any artificial effort to, capture the substance.
You're correct. It would be very difficult to try to capture a part per billion levels in a river the size of the Ohio River. The one thing Bureau of Public Health did tell me, and Ursanko's been working with the water companies again on treatability aspects of this, as the gentleman from West Virginia American Water said, indicated granular activated carbon works well for this organic compound, and at those trace levels, any treatment facility that did happen to or have concerns about it coming in can treat their finished water tanks with granular activated carbon, is what I've been told by Bureau of Public Health, and that is very efficient in removing it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions to this presenter? The gentleman from the 100th.
You mentioned that the contaminant can sink. Is it something that will sink? Is it heavier than water, and will it, eventually sink to the bottom and potentially be a problem longer
Again,
term?
you've got to remember, it's at 12 parts per billion, you're literally talking about a drop in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, so it's going to dissipate into the water column fairly quickly.
Okay.
And my understanding of this, the other thing that the Bureau of Public Health has indicated is the odor threshold for this compound is about 10 times lower than what the actual analytical equipment can see, which means you can smell it. If it was in your water, you could smell it far below what a piece of equipment could actually see it at.
Okay, so
And there's been no complaints, I guess is where I was going with that. That from Orsenco and the Bureau of Public Health, that's what they've told me. They have not had any complaints from any water users as far as odor.
and we think the testing is sufficient to actually determine that there is going to be no problem? Because I've seen testing before where the testing was not as effective as we thought it was going to be, so, but you're pretty confident that this testing for this contaminant is adequate?
Yes, sir. We've been working with Orsenco, and it's been very effective in tracking this plume downstream. So the testing seems to be working very well.
And can you tell me what would be a threat? How many parts per billion would someone need to worry about?
ATSDR indicated that 560 ppb is a level of concern.
Okay, so
If it gets
we're far
above
below
that,
that.
and the highest we've seen is 12, and
Okay.
currently we're seeing less than 3. And again, at the dilution rate that's occurring in the Ohio River right now, they expect it to be below detection soon, if it isn't already.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Mandarola, for being here. I might be barking up the wrong tree with this line of questioning, but are you familiar at all with our state's sort of emergency procedure should this sort of thing happen within our borders?
As far as emergency response,
Yeah, like the train derailment, and if this event had taken place here, are you familiar with how we would have handled that?
the DEP has a emergency response, a Homeland Security Emergency Services group, and we actually were on site within 24 hours of the derailment in Ohio because of the concerns that it might impact West Virginia. I'm not specifically concerned or familiar with our particular train derailment procedures. You probably need to talk to Homeland Security.
So, this, once again, may be kind of a dumb question, but what was the virtue of blowing it up? This is a question I've wanted to know since I've read about the story. What was the virtue of blowing up the derailed train? Why?
My understanding was when the train originally derailed, there was a fire, okay? And the heat from the fire was increasing the temperature of the vinyl chloride tanks. Vinyl chloride, if you had vinyl chloride in here in a jar and you opened it, it would begin to evaporate immediately. It has a very low vapor pressure. And because of the heat associated with the fire after the derailment, they were very concerned about a catastrophic failure of a tank due to the overpressurization, and then you would have an intense fireball that could potentially occur because vinyl chloride is very flammable. So they did a controlled leak on the tanks and then contained the leak and burned it so that it wasn't under pressure. The concern was if a pressurized tank explodes into and starts to burn, it's going to cause a much, much larger out-of-control situation than a controlled burn. And I mean, that's what I've heard, and I have no reason to doubt the response that the emergency folks on site took.
Thank you, Mr. Rolla, for, if nothing else, satisfying my curiosity. So thank you for that, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from the 92nd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. My question has to do with the burn itself. You said it's vinyl chloride. What happens when you ignite vinyl chloride? What is the emission while it's burning?
I mean, you're going to see your normal combustion byproducts that you would. And our monitors, particulate matter, SO2, NOx, things like that. And that's what our monitors in West Virginia actually detect. So we didn't see any increase in any of those by the time it reached our borders. And again, we're about 40 miles, stream miles, from the crash site.
Are
the
there
border of
any
West Virginia.
dangers of what's being put out into the air being, combining with the rain and having acid rain or something that's even worse than burning it off?
Well, SO2 and NOx typically would be combined with rain to cause acid rain. And again, we didn't see any increase in those at our monitors in the northern panhandle. So based on that, I wouldn't expect anything in our jurisdiction
Okay,
being impacted.
thank you.
Further questions, gentlemen from the 18th?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I heard you correctly, you said that what you called the plume was at Point Pleasant at about 11 o'clock
This
today.
morning.
And even though it was at a very low level compared to where it's a concern, do you know if someone from your office has been in contact with the water department in Point Pleasant or Mason County? And follow-up question, as my understanding, we have deep wells there, so we don't pull from the river anyway, but can you address
All
that?
the water companies that draw either from what's considered rainy wells or swigs that potentially pull water through the alluvium out of the Ohio River or have direct water intakes from the Ohio were contacted early on, days ago. And the DEP, Bureau of Public Health, and/or Senko has been in contact with these folks as we track this plume downriver. So I'm very confident that every water company that potentially could be impacted by this has been in constant conversations with Senko in the tracking of this plume to make sure that no one's unaware of the situation.
All right, good to hear. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions, this presenter, the gentlelady from the 56th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Scott. We talked previously, there was a third chemical, the antifreeze one. Could you just speak to that a little bit?
I might have to pull some paperwork.
I don't
out.
remember
My
the name.
understanding, ethylene glycol was in one of the tanks, but I believe it was spilled on site and did not impact the water and is
Okay.
being remediated through soil excavation, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. And then,
Yeah, one rail car had ethylene glycol,
and-
partially released,
okay, partially. Okay, thanks. And then,
and it was removed from the ground.
I've seen some people concerned about wildlife or their pets in the northern panhandle. Have you had any concerns about that?
Again, the site is 40 miles up a number of tribs of the Ohio, and I've been in contact with our folks and Senko, and there's been no reports of any impact to fish, wildlife along the Ohio and the West Virginia border. Anecdotally, I heard in the immediate impact area, there was a fish kill, but I have no direct knowledge of that. But that was 40 miles up in the trib of Little Beaver Creek.
Okay, thank you so much.
Further questions to the presenter? I'll have a few. Mr. Mandarola, thank you again for being here. Sir, I think perhaps to summarize, much of what's going on here, there's one primary chemical of concern that you went to at great length to discuss the dilution in both air and/or water. I think that was forgive me, I've got a note here.
Butyl acrylate.
Butyl acrylate. But other than what the gentlelady just mentioned, is there any other chemical that was spilled, burned, or otherwise, emitted that you believe is a threat or concern to public health?
No, sir. The three that I'm aware of are ethylene glycol, vinyl chloride, and the butyl acrylate. The vinyl chloride, because of its very volatile nature, may have impacted some of the tributaries, but we haven't detected in the confirmation samples vinyl chloride along the Ohio River at all. The one chemical that we have identified is the butyl acrylate.
Okay.
And I believe the effluent glycol was contained on site.
Okay, very good. And you said that the greatest that we've seen in a parts per billion anywhere thus far has been 3.
12.
Excuse me, 12. It's now down to 3 at Point
It's
Pleasant. Is that
below
correct?
3.
Okay.
And it's dropped.
And dropped. But so that 3 parts per billion would have been roughly, what, 0.005, so I guess 0.5% of what you're saying the guidance is the concern level.
Yeah, 560 parts per million
Okay.
is the guidance level.
Okay.
So 3 would be considerably less.
0.5% of that, yeah. Okay, and so you feel like there is anything at this point that we as legislature need to do or that the public needs to do to protect themselves, their families, or our constituents?
I believe that the situation is being well handled. Monitoring will continue. I don't think there's anything necessary at this time, no.
Okay. And final question for you, sir. And I think the gentleman from the 15th sort of began to go into this, that, do we have these controls in place, should something happen in the state of West Virginia? Is there anything that you feel that you need from us or that we should be looking at related to making sure that rail service is safe in the state of West Virginia and that, we don't run into another potential issue like this in the future?
Nothing that I'm aware of at this time.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mander. Gentlelady, that's all right. The gentlelady from the 56th.
Thank you, thanks. Sorry, Scott. I had a constituent ask, is there anywhere where the general public where can they trust information from? Is there anywhere where they can see any of this data, if they could comprehend it, or what should we, as legislators, be telling people?
Okay, Orsanco released some of the QAQC data this morning.
Okay.
There's more expected to be released. I imagine that they're posting that on the Orsanco website.
Okay.
We are also receiving it. I can check with Terry Fletcher, our information person, and make sure that we're posting that on our website when it becomes available.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any further questions? If not, Mr. Mandarola, thank you for the update. Thank you very much. All right. We're going to move around on the agenda a little bit here to try to get some things done. Thank you, and thank you to the members for taking the time there, and certainly please share the information that we've received with your constituents. And once again, thank you to folks with both the private sector and DEP for assisting us here. All right. Next item that we'll pull up. All right. There's now before the committee House Bill 3498 relating to the Consumer Data Protection Act and establishing a framework for controlling and processing personal data in the state. Is there interest in the bill? Gentleman from the 21st.
Mr. Chairman, I move House Bill 3498.
Gentleman from the 21st moves House Bill 3498. Council will please, in a moment, explain the bill.